Hey friends, tonight we re-curling up with a quieter chapter of medieval life. The unexpected bond between people and their pets. Yes, even in the age of plagues and parchment, someone was definitely sneaking food to a cat under the monastery table. If that kind of human detail makes history feel alive for you, go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more stories from the softer side of the past. And as always, let me know in the comments where you re-listening from and what time it is. I love seeing where these old tailies are finding new ears. Now settle in, and if there's a pet nearby, give them a little pat from me. You hear it before you see her, the soft thump of paws on straw, moving with the slow confidence of someone who knows they belong. Grimalkin, the monastery's unofficial queen, curls herself against your leg like she's done it 1,000 times before. Her purr hums through the wool of your habit like a second prayer. Forget the bells. Forget the brothers in the chapel. This morning, it's a cat that calls you back to the living. You shift slightly on your wooden stool, manuscripts spread before you, and Grimalkin adjusts accordingly. This is her morning ritual as much as yours, the claiming of your warmth, the establishment of her rightful place in your routine. The other brothers affect disapproval, of course. Brother Benedict makes pointed comments about vermin and proper monastic discipline. But even he doesn't protest too loudly when Grimalkin dispatches the mice that would otherwise nibble through their precious vellum, leaving tiny, maddening holes where words should be. The truth is, you need her as much as she needs the scraps you slip her from the refectory. Not just for the mice, though God knows there are enough of those in these stone walls, but for something harder to name. Company, perhaps. The particular comfort of a creature who asks nothing of your soul, makes no demands on your prayers, judges neither your devotion nor your doubts. She simply is, warm and present and utterly herself, in a world that constantly requires you to be someone else. This morning, she's brought you a gift. You discover it when you reach for your pen. A small, gray mouse, quite dead, placed with ceremonial precision beside your inkwell. Her offering to your morning's work. You should probably be horrified blood on the page where you're copying St. Augustine, death mingling with holy words. Instead, you find yourself oddly touched. In her feline way, she's participating in your labor, contributing what she can to the great work of preserving knowledge. You remember reading, in one of the older manuscripts, a note scribbled by some long-dead scribe. Pangur Ban and I practice our arts together, he hunting mice, I hunting words upon this page, each of us content with our own trade. The monastery at Raikkow, you think it was, though your memory grows uncertain. The sentiment, though that remains perfectly clear. This understanding between human and animal, each pursuing their own mysteries in companionable silence. The bell tower chimes, calling you to lauds. Grimalkin's ears twitch at the sound, but she makes no move to leave. If anything, she settles more firmly against your leg, as if to say that her prayers, whatever they might be, are perfectly well conducted from this spot. You close your manuscript carefully, brush away the mouse, and try to shift her from your lap. She gives you a look of magnificent disdain. Not the simple annoyance of a creature disturbed, but something more complex, a judgment, perhaps, on the strange priorities of humans who abandon perfectly good warming spots to go mumble in cold chapels. Still, she allows herself to be relocated to your sleeping mat, circling twice before settling into the warm depression your body has left in the straw. The chapel is already filled with the murmur of morning prayers when you arrive. Your place in the choir stalls, third from the left, second row. The familiar weight of the psalter in your hands. The rise and fall of plainchant that has marked these hours for more years than you care to count. But part of your mind remains in your cell, with that small, furry weight and the gift of a dead mouse left by your pen. Brother Francis, to your right, smells faintly of the stable, not unpleasantly hay and leather and the warm, grassy scent of horses. He tends the monastery's animals, the ones that earn their keep through honest labor rather than mere companionship. The great draft horses that pull the plow through the abbey's fields, the oxen with their patient rolling gait, the nimble donkeys that carry loads up the narrow mountain paths when merchants come to trade. But even Brother Francis has his particular attachments. You've seen him with Crispin, a clever little donkey who seems to understand not just the words of command, but something deeper, the mood behind them, the urgency or casualness of the given task. Crispin follows him about the courtyard like an oversized dog, ears swiveling to catch every word. When Francis speaks to him, and he does speak to him, long conversations in the kind of tone one uses with a trusted friend, the donkey's responses seem considered, almost conversational. The other day, you caught Francis slipping Crispin an apple from the refectory stores. Not furtively, not with guilt, but with the matter-of-fact affection one shows to family. When he noticed your observation, he shrugged, unabashed. "He worked hard today," was all he said, but his hand lingered on the donkey's nose, scratching gently at the spot that makes Crispin's eyes half close with pleasure. After lauds, you return to your cell to find Grimalkin exactly where you left her, though she's clearly been busy in your absence. The mouse has vanished. Where? You prefer not to investigate, and she's somehow managed to knock your quill to the floor. It lies beside your writing desk, the tip slightly bent. You pick it up, test it against a scrap of vellum, and sigh. Serviceable, but it will need recutting. She watches this examination with the serene indifference of one who has already forgotten whatever small chaos she may have caused. Her tail, however, twitches with what you've learned to recognize as barely suppressed mischief. Cats, you've observed, seem incapable of true remorse. They exist in a permanent state of having meant to do exactly what they did, even when what they did was clearly accidental. You settle back to your copying St. Augustine's Confessions today, the familiar Latin flowing from hand to vellum. The work is meditative, each letter shaped with the same careful attention your brothers give to their gardening or their cooking. But it's also demanding a moment's inattention and spoil hours of labor. One misplaced stroke, one careless smear of ink, and you must begin the entire page again. Grimalkin settles on the corner of your desk, careful to avoid the wet ink, but close enough to supervise. Her presence is oddly comforting. When doubt creeps in, and it does creep in, despite your vows, despite your certainty, she provides an anchor to the physical world. The simple fact of her breathing, the warm reality of her body, the complete lack of existential crisis in her golden eyes. You think sometimes that animals know something humans have forgotten. Not about God, perhaps, though, who can say what passes through the mind of a cat at prayer time, but about being, about the sufficiency of the present moment. Grimalkin never worries about tomorrow's mice. She never regrets yesterday's failed hunts. She simply is, here and now, completely herself. The morning passes in this companionable quiet. Your pen moves across the parchment, forming words that have been copied countless times by countless hands. Augustine's wrestling with faith, his struggles with desire and doubt, his final surrender to divine love. Beside you, Grimalkin dozes, occasionally opening one eye to check on your progress before settling back into sleep. Around mid-morning, Brother Benedict appears in your doorway. His expression, as usual, manages to convey both spiritual superiority and mild digestive distress. His gaze falls immediately on Grimalkin, who chooses this moment to stretch, extending her claws in a gesture that could be interpreted as either feline maintenance or deliberate provocation. "Brother Thomas," Benedict says, his voice carrying the particular tone he reserves for discussions of proper monastic discipline, "perhaps we might speak about your companion." You set down your pen carefully, buying time. Benedict's disapproval of Grimalkin is well known, though it's never been directly voiced. Something about the impropriety of particular affections, the danger of worldly attachments, the unseemly nature of sharing one's cell with a creature that, as he puts it, serves no purpose beyond its own pleasure. She keeps the mice from the manuscripts, you say mildly. As would a trap, or proper storage methods. This is true, of course. But traps don't purr when you're lonely. Proper storage methods don't provide companionship during the long hours of copying. You don't say this aloud. Benedict would not understand, and even if he did, he would consider it further evidence of your spiritual weakness. Instead, you gesture to the morning's work. 3 pages without interruption. No holes from nibbling rodents. No smeared ink from startled jumps when mice rustle through the rushes. Benedict examines your work with grudging approval. Your hand is neat, your letters well formed. The margins are clean, the lines straight. Even he cannot find fault with the quality of your copying. Grimalkin, during this inspection, has fixed Benedict with the kind of stare cats reserved for beings they find simultaneously amusing and irrelevant. Her tail, draped over the edge of the desk, twitches with what might be boredom or might be barely contained hilarity. Benedict notices this attention and shifts uncomfortably. Nevertheless, he says, attachment to earthly creatures is the beginning of love? You finish quietly. As Augustine himself wrote, we learn to love the Creator through loving the created. This stops him, as you knew it would. Benedict prizes theological argument above almost everything else, but he's never quite sure whether you're being genuinely devout or subtly heretical. The truth, which you've never shared with him, is that you're not entirely sure yourself. He leaves with a final disapproving look at Grimalkin, who has the poor grace to begin washing her paw in full view, displaying a flexibility that seems almost deliberately immodest. You return to your copying, but your concentration has been broken. The smooth flow of text and thought has been interrupted by the necessity of defending your choices. Grimalkin, sensing your mood, abandons her grooming to rub against your arm. The gesture is simple, wordless, but perfectly timed. She asks no questions about your faith or your vows. She offers no advice about proper monastic behavior. She simply provides the comfort of presence, warm and undemanding. This, you think, is perhaps what Benedict fears. Not the cat herself, but what she represents: a love that asks nothing in return. A relationship free from the complex negotiations of human spiritual community. In a world where every interaction carries weight, where every word must be measured against doctrine and discipline, there's something almost transgressive about the simplicity of affection between human and animal. The day continues in its familiar rhythm. Prime, a morning chapter meeting, work in the scriptorium, sext at midday. Through it all, your awareness returns periodically to your cell and its small occupant. Even when you're chanting psalms or listening to lectures on theological fine points, part of your mind remains connected to that purring presence, that warm weight against your shin. This, you suppose, is what Benedict would call dangerous attachment. This sense that your day is somehow incomplete without that morning greeting, that evening settling. The way you find yourself saving choice bits from meals, small offerings for yellow eyes and soft fur. The conversation you hold with her. Yes, you do talk to her, though you deny it if asked directly about your work, your doubts, the particular challenges of rendering Latin into readable script. After the noon meal, you return to find her gone. This isn't unusual. Cats have their own mysterious schedules, their own urgent business that requires immediate attention. But the cell feels different in her absence, somehow larger and less defined. You settle to your afternoon's work, a continuation of Augustine's spiritual journey, but find yourself listening for the soft sound of paws on rushes. She returns as the light begins to fade, slipping through the narrow window that opens onto the monastery garden. Her timing, as always, is impeccable. You've just finished cleaning your pen and setting aside the day's completed pages. She lands on your desk with a soft thud, brings you the scent of outside air, of grass and earth, and 100 small secrets that cats discover in their wanderings. This time, her gift is different. Not a mouse, but something stranger, a small brown feather, perfectly intact, placed with the same ceremonial precision beside your inkwell. You pick it up, turn it in the dying light. Sparrow, perhaps, or finch. Where she found it, how she carried it here without damaging the delicate barbs, why she chose to bring it to you. These are mysteries that belong entirely to her. But the gesture touches you in a way that surprises with its intensity. She has brought you something beautiful, something unnecessary, something that serves no practical purpose beyond the offering itself. In a world where every object must justify its existence through utility, she has given you something purely aesthetic, purely gift. You smooth the feather between your fingers, feeling its impossible lightness. Tomorrow, you think, you'll press it between the pages of your personal psalter. Not the monastery's copy, but the small book you brought with you when you took your vows, the one that contains your private prayers and observations. A reminder of this moment, this simple generosity from a creature who owes you nothing but chooses to share her discoveries anyway. The bell calls vespers, and again you must choose between duty and companionship. Again, Grimalkin settles herself in the warm spot you're abandoning, her expression suggesting that she finds human priorities both predictable and faintly ridiculous. You touch her head, briefly soft fur, warm skull, the vibration of purring against your palm, and leave for evening prayers. The chapel is golden with candlelight, shadows dancing on stone walls worn smooth by centuries of worship. Your voice joins the familiar antiphony, the call and response that has marked these hours since long before you were born, and will continue long after you redust. But tonight, the prayers feel less like duty and more like gratitude, for the day's work completed without error, for the small gifts unexpected, a feather, a purr, the simple presence of another living creature in your solitary life. Brother Francis is beside you again, and you catch that same scent of stable and hay. During the silent prayer that follows the final psalm, you find yourself wondering about his conversations with Crispin the donkey. What does he say during those long working days? Does he share his doubts, his hopes, his small frustrations with monastic life? Does the donkey, in his patient way, provide the same wordless comfort that Grimalkin offers you? After Compline, the great silence begins. No more spoken words until morning. No conversation beyond what's absolutely necessary. You return to your cell in the quiet that will last until dawn, feet finding their way along paths worn smooth by countless brothers, walking the same route to the same rhythms of prayer and work and rest. Grimalkin is waiting, of course. She greets your return with a brief acknowledgement, a raised head, a slow blink that might be affection or might be sleepy recognition. You prepare for sleep, hanging your habit on its wooden peg, settling onto your straw mattress with its wool blanket. The fire in the small brazier burns low, casting dancing shadows on the cell walls. She joins you as you knew she would, settling against your side with that particular cat talent for finding the exact spot that provides maximum warmth for her and maximum comfort for you. Her purring fills the silence, a sound older than words, older than prayer, a rumbling contentment that asks nothing beyond this moment of shared warmth. In the darkness, you think about Benedict's objections, about the proper ordering of monastic life, about the dangers of earthly attachment. These concerns seem less urgent now, less pressing than the simple reality of breathing fur and rhythmic purring. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, its own demands for spiritual discipline. Tonight, there is only this, the weight of a small, warm body, the sound of contentment in the dark, the unexpected grace of unconditional companionship. Your last conscious thought, as sleep begins to claim you, is about the feather she brought you. Such a small thing, easily overlooked, but somehow perfect in its uselessness. A reminder that not everything valuable must serve a practical purpose. Sometimes the most important gifts are the ones that serve no function beyond duty, beyond the simple generosity of sharing what we've found wonderful in the world. Tomorrow you'll wake to the sound of matins bells, and she'll be there, probably having spent the night migrating from your side to the warm spot by the dying fire and back again. The day will unfold in its familiar patterns, prayer and work and meals and more prayer, but it will be marked throughout by her presence, by the small rituals of companionship that have become as essential to your routine as the offices themselves. This is what Brother Benedict cannot understand, what the rule books cannot account for, that love, even the simple love between human and animal, sanctifies the ordinary moments, that the divine can be found not just in solemn prayer and theological study, but in the way a cat settles against your shin while you work, the way she brings you gifts of mouse and feather, the way her purring fills the silence with a contentment that asks nothing beyond acknowledgement. You sleep, and she sleeps beside you, and somewhere in the darkness the monastery breathes with the rhythm of prayer and rest that has continued for centuries. In the morning, the bells will ring, and the cycle will begin again. But tonight, there is only warmth and fur and the soft sound of contentment in the dark, and it is enough. More than enough. It is grace itself, wearing 4 paws and a tail, offering the simple gift of presence in a world that too often demands everything else. The weight of fur against your ribs, the sound of purring in the silence, the small, perfect gift of a brown feather beside your inkwell. These are the things that make the monastic life not just bearable, but beautiful. These are the prayers that need no words, the devotions that ask nothing beyond acknowledgement, the love that sanctifies every ordinary moment with its simple, unreasonable generosity. But perhaps you think this attachment too sentimental, too removed from the harsh realities of medieval life? Let me tell you about winter then. About the morning you wake to find frost coating the inside of your cell window, and grimalkin pressed so close against your chest that you can feel each individual rib through her fur. She's not purring now, she's conserving every scrap of warmth, every calorie of energy. Her nose, when you touch it gently with one finger, is cold as stone. The brazier died sometime in the night. Your water basin wears a skin of ice thick enough to crack when you press it with your knuckle. The rushes on the floor crunch with frost, and your breath makes small clouds in the gray dawn light. This is when animals stop being romantic companions and become matters of survival, mutual dependence stripped of sentiment. You rebuild the fire with stiff fingers, coaxing flame from ember and tinder while grimalkin watches from the nest of blankets. When the first real warmth begins to spread through the cell, she ventures down to sit as close to the brazier as safety allows, her fur slightly singed from pressing too near the heat. The smell wool and smoke and slightly burned cat fur becomes the scent of winter mornings, of small victories against the cold. It's during these harsh months that you truly understand why the monastery tolerates the animals. Not from sentiment, but from necessity. The mice multiply in the granary, seeking the same warmth and sustenance that draws humans together behind thick stone walls. Without grimalkin and her kind, for she's not the only cat in the monastery, merely the only one who has claimed you, the winter stores would disappear into tiny, gnawing mouths. Brother Francis's animals work even harder when the snow comes. The great horses labor through drifts to reach the woodpile, their breath steaming, their hooves finding purchase on icy cobblestones through some mysterious equine wisdom. Crispin the donkey develops a thick winter coat that makes him look like a small, patient bear, and his sure-footed navigation of the treacherous paths becomes essential for carrying supplies between the monastery's scattered buildings. Even the abbey's peacocks, yes, there are peacocks, gifts from some long-forgotten benefactor who thought monastic life needed more beauty earn their keep by raising such a clamor when strangers approach that they serve as living alarm bells. Their harsh cries echo off the stone walls, warning of merchants or pilgrims or less welcome visitors making their way up the mountain path. You learn, during these winter months, to read the subtle signs of animal distress. The way grimalkin's ears flatten when the wind howls through gaps in the stone, suggesting that a particularly bitter night is coming. How she seeks out the warmest spots with an urgency that has nothing to do with comfort and everything to do with survival. The morning you find her curled inside your writing box, having somehow managed to lift the heavy wooden lid and nestle among your quills and ink bottles. You realize she's not being mischievous, she's being practical. That same morning, Brother Benedict arrives for his weekly inspection to find you carefully extracting a cat from among your writing supplies. His expression suggests that this represents some new low in monastic discipline. But before he can speak, you hold up your inkwell. The ink inside is liquid, unfrozen, kept warm by the cat's body heat through the night. She saved the morning's work, you say simply, and even Benedict cannot argue with such practical results. Spring, when it finally comes, transforms your relationship with Grimalkin yet again. The cell grows warm enough that she no longer needs to steal your body heat, and she begins to venture outside for longer periods. She returns with gifts that speak of a world awakening young shoots that smell of earth and rain, the occasional unfortunate fledgling that you hastily dispose of while pretending not to notice. Her behavior changes too. The desperate conservatism of winter gives way to something more playful, more experimental. She rediscovers the joy of knocking things off your desk, of batting at the quill while you're trying to write, of inserting herself between you and your work with the confident assumption that she is infinitely more interesting than Augustine's theological musings. This is when you begin to understand the seasonal rhythms that govern animal behavior, the way their needs and moods shift with the turning year. In winter, Grimalkin was a creature of pure survival, focused entirely on warmth and sustenance. In spring, she becomes something more complex, playful, curious, occasionally maddening in her insistence on attention. The other brothers notice these changes too. Brother Paul, who tends the monastery garden, begins to report that several cats have taken up residence among his herb beds, and rather than chasing them away, he's found their presence beneficial. They keep the rabbits from his tender shoots, and their deposits, when properly composted, prove excellent for the soil. Brother Francis observes that Crispin has developed what can only be called friendships with some of the cats. The little donkey will lower his great head to allow them to rub against his nose, and more than once, Francis has found him standing guard over a cat, taking a nap in his stall as if protecting her from disturbance. Even the monastery, his more exotic residence, pair of white doves kept in the infirmary for some half-remembered medicinal purpose, seem to participate in these interspecies relationships. They've learned to recognize the footsteps of Brother Luke, who tends them, and will call out greeting when he approaches. More surprisingly, they've begun to respond to human speech, cooing specific responses to specific words as if engaging in rudimentary conversation. Summer brings its own revelations. The long days mean more light for copying, but also more heat in your cell. Grimalkin adapts by becoming largely nocturnal, disappearing during the hottest parts of the day and returning in the evening when the stone walls begin to release their stored warmth. She develops a preference for sleeping on the cool stones near the window, sprawled in positions that seem to defy feline dignity but clearly provide maximum cooling. This is when her hunting becomes most impressive. The warm weather brings out the mice in unprecedented numbers, and Grimalkin rises to meet the challenge with what can only be called professional pride. You begin to find elaborate arrangements of deceased rodents, not just random kills, but carefully organized displays that suggest some kind of feline artistic sensibility. One morning, you discover 7 mice arranged in a perfect circle around your inkwell, their heads all pointing inward like the spokes of a wheel. Another day, she presents you with a collection sorted by size, from tiny shrews to a rat nearly as large as she is. The precision of these arrangements suggests intelligence far beyond simple hunting instinct. She's creating patterns, making choices, perhaps even engaging in what humans might call play. The summer also brings visitors to the monastery, pilgrims seeking blessing, merchants trading goods, nobles making donations in exchange for prayers. This means more activity in the courtyards, more strangers for the animals to assess and react to. You begin to notice how differently each creature responds to newcomers. Grimalkin becomes almost invisible when strangers appear, melting into shadows and appearing only after they've left. The peacocks, by contrast, seem to view visitors as an audience, displaying their magnificent tails with renewed enthusiasm. The monastery is Lone Goose, a formidable creature that belongs officially to no one, but has appointed herself guardian of the main gate, approaches each newcomer with what appears to be systematic evaluation, either accepting their presence with dignified indifference or driving them away with aggressive honking. Brother Francis's horses show the most sophisticated responses to strangers. They seem to categorize people by some invisible criteria, welcoming merchants with gentle curiosity, maintaining careful distance from armed nobles, showing particular patience with children and pilgrims. Crispin has developed an uncanny ability to identify people carrying food, approaching them with shameless optimism that is usually rewarded with treats. As autumn arrives and the days grow shorter, you begin to observe the preparations for another winter. Grimalkin's behavior shifts again, becoming more focused on territory and resources. She begins to cache small prey items in various hiding spots around your cell, creating reserves against the lean months ahead. You discover these hoards periodically: a mouse tucked behind your psalter, a vole wrapped carefully in the folds of your spare habit. The monastery's other animals show similar preparations. The peacocks molt their brilliant feathers, growing denser, warmer plumage. The horses develop their thick winter coats, and their behavior becomes more herd-like, seeking companionship and shared warmth. Even the fish in the monastery's small pond seem to sense the changing seasons, moving less, eating less, preparing for the dormancy of winter. But it's during these transition periods that you notice something remarkable about the owl: relationships between humans and animals in the monastery. They're not simply utilitarian, not merely practical arrangements for mutual benefit. They've become something more complex, genuine partnerships based on understanding, adaptation, and what can only be called affection. Brother Francis doesn't just work with his animals. He communicates with them in a language of gesture and tone that goes far beyond simple commands. When Crispin is reluctant to carry a heavy load, Francis doesn't force compliance, but engages in what appears to be negotiation, adjusting the weight, offering incentives, sometimes simply waiting until the donkey's mood improves. Brother Paul has developed similar relationships with the cats in his garden. He's learned to read their subtle signals about weather changes, pest problems, and the health of his plants. When a particular cat spends extra time in one section of the garden, he knows to look for problems there: fungal infections, insect damage, or soil issues that his human senses might miss. Even Brother Benedict, despite his official disapproval, has been observed engaging in quiet conversation with the monastery's ancient library cat, a venerable Tom who has claimed the warmest spot near the copying desks. The cat's presence seems to calm Benedict's legendary impatience with novice scribes, and more than once you've seen him slip the old Tom a morsel from his own meal. These relationships challenge everything you were taught about proper monastic detachment, about the dangers of worldly affection. Yet they also demonstrate something profound about the nature of divine love, its tendency to appear in unexpected forms, to manifest through the simplest gestures of care and companionship. As winter approaches again, you find yourself grateful, not just for Grimalkin's practical contributions to your work, but for the way her presence has taught you to see the sacred in the ordinary, the divine in the everyday rhythms of life and death, hunger and satisfaction, warmth and cold that govern all living creatures. In the morning, you'll wake to bells and duty and the endless demands of spiritual discipline. But tonight, there is only this: breathing fur and rhythmic contentment, and the quiet grace of a creature who has chosen, for reasons entirely her own, to share her life with yours. It is enough. It has always been enough. And in the morning, When you reach for your pen and find another small gift waiting beside the inkwell, perhaps a pebble this time, or a dried leaf, or something even more mysteriously wonderful, you'll understand once again that the most important prayers are the ones we never planned to say, offered by hearts we never expected to touch our own.